I have the pleasure of having with me today Donna Carter, and she's been kind enough to join me. She is with Carter People Strategy Partners.
I want to really bridge the gap between organizational culture, vision, and mission and actual strategic vision. What it means to really have your culture inform your strategy and vice versa. So they really should go together instead of being totally separate.
What you're offering and what you're identifying to me is really priceless, because once you have that figured out, at least the process of being able to align your culture with your processes, then I think the rest really does take care of itself.
Turnkey ability, scalability, brand strength, and things.
The idea of making that investment can be kind of daunting.
They tell us what they want, and when we create it, the market is already there.
Hit the pavement trying to find new blood, as they say.
Startup, or whether they're an existing business.
And so for me, push is to persevere until something happens.
There's greatness in that. Let's give you some space to go leverage that and bring all of that to the game.
Hi, everybody. This is Johnny Romero with the J3 Collaboration Project. I have the pleasure of having with me today Donna Carter, and she's been kind enough to join me. She is with Carter People Strategy Partners. And Donna, welcome.
Thank you and welcome. Thank you for having me, Johnny.
So I think it's fair that we start with, how did we meet and our history together, which is amazing how the years have gone by already. But how did we meet? Go ahead. I'll let you go first, and I'll kind of fill in anything that I remember.
Yeah. Along with Carter People Strategy Partners, I run the Clark County Equity Coalition, and we were looking for a program where we could teach medical interpretation to our students. And one of the members of our local health department, one of their employees had gone through your Bridging the Gap medical program, interpreting program. And so that's how we met. So I reached out to see if you could, and can you believe, I think this year will be 4 years, Johnny, since we started that. Yeah.
It does not feel like that.
I know.
But
Yeah.
That's wild.
I know.
And it's interesting because I remember specifically one person from Clark County taking the course, and we do have participants that just, not necessarily part of a group, but it stood out a little bit because it was an area of the country at that time that we hadn't really had a lot of exposure. And then, I remember specifically having that person in the class for that reason. Yeah. So when you reached out to me about, the program and with the Clark County Equity Coalition, it really was good timing, I think, because it was at a time where Intersys LLC and, myself and my co-trainer, Jose Barra, we had really kind of just gotten into giving this course for probably at that time, going back 4 years, we've been teaching it over 5 now. So we probably had our first year under our belt. Mm-hmm. And we were really wanting to continue our reach and our, extending the program specifically to offer it to bilingual proficients in high school. And that was something that had always been kind of in my line of, sight, or part of my goals to eventually kind of make this just a program that was accessible to that population. And so when we had talked, 4 years ago now, it was really with that purpose of seeing what could be done, not just in Clark County, but using, Clark County as the model of what the program could become in years ahead. So we successfully, over that period of time, a lot of planning, a lot of coordination, which you were phenomenal with, and connecting, all of these thought leaders and decision makers, within the school district, but also with, the University of Kentucky School of Medicine.
Yep.
And, it really came together nicely
Mm-hmm.
so that we could have our first official cohort of seniors that were able to take Bridging the Gap, which is, for those watching, an accredited medical interpreter training that's recognized nationally through the Cross-Cultural Healthcare Program, which is a nonprofit in Seattle, Washington. And since 1992, they have really been, the pioneers and the course that has been most recognized, not the only course, because there are other courses that are accredited. However, they were the first of its kind. And I've now, like I said, been teaching for over 5 years. We've actually, which is just kind of crazy to say it, we've trained successfully over 400 interpreters to date. We may reach 500 this year. And, that was definitely not part of at all my ambition or my vision. It would just kind of happened. And I'm very grateful for that.
Yeah.
And definitely your support, it has been, a big part of that. So I thank you for kind of sticking through it, because it has been 4 years. And I think the reason it doesn't feel like it is because we have been very active in that time. A lot of things have happened. We've gotten to see each other in person as well, which was always nice to put I got to meet your family as well, which is really nice as well. And that's really just been a really nice experience to be able to kind of continue our relationship. And now that you have kind of started a new chapter, if you will, with Carter People Strategy Partners. And so I'd like you to share a little bit about how that came to be and what exactly are you doing now?
Yeah. Thanks. It's been great, and we continue to partner on the interpreter program. But last year, I launched Carter People Strategy Partners, which is a human resource consultant company. It's actually more than human resources, but my background, I have over 15 plus years of human resource experience, and it's along with the nonprofit, it's what I currently do in my professional life. And so I launched Carter People Strategy Partners because I want to really bridge the gap between organizational culture, vision, and mission, and actual strategic vision. And a lot of times in organizations, the strategy is on one end of the spectrum, and the culture and the vision are on another, when really they should really inform one another, and the culture and vision and strategy should be embedded together. Your culture and your vision should be embedded in your policies and your practices and how you operate and how you interact with your employees, with your external partners, your vendors. And I have found that when you can manage to do that as consistently as possible, it really does impact the bottom line. Your employees are more engaged, they're more innovative. And so I launched Carter People Strategy Partners as a business to help organizations achieve that and help them, leaders, HR professionals, to really understand what it means to really have your culture inform your strategy, and vice versa. So they really should go together instead of being totally separate practices.
That makes sense. No, and I think that we talk about culture. It's something that, as a language professional, that I teach, part of the curriculum has a lot to do with culture. I think it makes total sense from a business standpoint to kind of intertwine the culture into, those different processes and, workflow. And how do you exactly identify the opportunities to merge those? And what is the process if someone is wanting to perhaps connect with you and reach out? What would they exactly experience to be able to accomplish that goal?
Well, The first thing would be to really do a diagnostic, because the other side of the issue is that a lot of organizations have culture statements that, when you really begin to dig, don't really align with what the actual culture is. I think people have a difficult time in organizations really defining their culture, because while you may have a culture statement, your culture is really what's happening underneath. Like when your new hire gets hired and they're with those experienced employees, what are they being told? What are they being told about your processes? How are they being informed about how your organization operates? I mean, that's really the true culture, right? Because
Sure.
that's what's going to impact how they show up. And I think a lot of organizations have a hard time putting their finger on that, because they don't have their pulse on that. They're not informed about that. And so the first thing would be to really conduct a diagnostic with the organization, do some interviews, some focus groups, and really find out what's happening with that culture. And not to say that you have to do away with your culture statement, but how do you get the two to align, which may mean embedding your new processes in your performance management. What's your performance management look like? What's your employee development look like? What are your hiring techniques, and how's your interview process? How are you onboarding individuals into the organization? And all those things aligning. When you can manage to get your finger on the pulse, and that may mean that there are some things in your cultural statement that are aspirational. There may be things in your culture statement that you have to revisit, because that's not actually what's happening. But really getting down to that, and then taking those things and embedding them in your performance management processes, embedding them in your hiring practices, embedding them in your employment policies and your training. And then that way, your strategic initiatives begin to align. Your employees feel a sense that, okay, this is an authentic organization, right? They're walking their talk. And nowadays, that is what employees are looking for. They are really looking for organizations that are going to stand behind what they're reporting out to the public, and are going to really stand behind. You have a corporate social responsibility report. Well, is that what's really happening? That's what people are looking for. And so the first thing would be to, contact Carter People Strategy Partners. Let's have a conversation, see where the needs are. We have several different ways to start, but usually the diagnostic is the first way to start. And we'll go through that, and then we'll determine, what your needs are, where you're willing to start. Because this type of work is a journey, right? You're not just going to jump in and change the culture overnight. And I think that's why a lot of people don't want to tackle it, because it is one of the hardest things to really change, because you're changing people's perspectives. You're changing how people may have already had experiences that are maybe not positive, maybe, that are impacting your culture. And then you're having to change that. That doesn't happen overnight.
Yeah, no, I think that's what I was trying to, get to, and you gave me the opening of a lot of times, with the J3 Collaboration Project, we work not just with small businesses, we work with medium and larger organizations. But I think specifically for smaller businesses, culture is such an important thing, because you touched on this point. I think what is a strength of small and probably even medium businesses is that cultural element that people are looking for, not to just be a number of a big corporate organization, right? And also have some satisfaction in the work that they're doing that has maybe, whether it's a social impact or community impact, so that they can feel that type of reward for the job well done. And I think the other part of that is, the bigger you get, the harder it is to start this process. And that's kind of my opinion. I'm just saying that. Would you feel free to correct me? But I think in my experience, you really, if you're going to do something like this, I don't think it's ever too late, to your point. But certainly if you're starting out and you really want to get a good foundation, I would think something like having this diagnostic would be just the best way to start, because then you're able to really enable yourself to accomplish exactly what most organizations try to do, which is execute on that cultural statement or that mission statement. And a lot of times what they fail to see is what you're talking about is, are we kind of building the roadmap so that we are able to really execute on what we want? Are things aligned as they should be, or are there some gaps that we should address before we really start scaling or getting bigger?
Yeah. And those are all great points. And you're right. I mean, the larger the organization, the more areas that you're going to have to figure out, where do we need to course correct? And but it is possible, but it is easier if you're in the startup mode. Or I've been with organizations who aren't startups, but they're like restructuring. So you're in that restructuring mode. It is better. And you're exactly right as far as people wanting to know that they are valued and they have an impact at work. I mean, when you think about it, we spend more time at work than we do at home, right?
Sure.
And so you want to go to work and know that what you're accomplishing is meaningful and it has an impact and it has value, and that helps to make the busy bad days a little better, because at least you know that you're impacting. And so when people don't have that is when they're not as engaged. Work quality goes down. They're not as creative. They're just there to get a paycheck. And I think historically, we have not been very good at really integrating culture with our strategic vision. It's like either one or the other. And even when you talk strategy, it's all about how we reach the end goal, how we optimize that bottom line. And we all know that there's so much more to successful organizations than that.
Yeah, no, I think as a business owner myself, I think it's what you're offering has such a value, because one of the biggest challenges to any business, regardless of size, is retention and talent acquisition of the right people that align with your culture. I think that to me is fundamental, and one of the key elements of the success that I've had in business, of identifying those individuals that are just a good fit for their success and the success of the company. And I think when you don't have that alignment, then you're going to have high turnover, or higher than what you'd anticipate or want. And then you have to invest more money in, kind of filling that spot with onboarding, et cetera. There's an expense to that.
Yes.
So in reality, it's not just for those that are maybe, I think, and you can kind of give me your thoughts on this. I think there's this misconception that, well, that's all nice. It's very kind of, as people say, kumbaya. It's like, we're all going to get together, but this is business, and at the end of the day, it's all about making money. When in reality, what you touched on just a moment ago, that it really actually helps you generate revenue when you are really making the right choices as far as having people in the right places so that they can be successful, and that you don't have unnecessary reallocation of resources because perhaps you just weren't aligned, because you really didn't have, to your point, the cultural element of what was the fit, what is the goal, what's the desired outcome, and do we have a process so that can continue to just move ahead in the right direction. And I know in my case, as a small business owner, it's even more crucial, because large corporations, they have larger budgets. So sometimes perhaps those bad decisions can be easily covered up because, they have perhaps a higher revenue stream, so that, it kind of can, be a little bit, overlooked and kind of covered up, if you will. Whereas a small business owner, one bad decision can be detrimental. So I think, again, there's value in any size, but I think for those that are really trying to have a stable kind of business model that can continue to grow and get stronger, what you're offering and what you're identifying to me is really priceless, because once you have that figured out, at least the process of being able to align your culture with your processes, then I think the rest really does take care of itself, which includes obviously generating revenue and offering whatever it is, your service or product, in a way that continues to reflect and represent the culture you claim to or project to the public.
Yeah. And you really hit on some really important things, because it does cost every time you have to hire. And then depending on the organization, you could hire someone, but they're truly not making an impact for maybe 6 months to a year until they fully get, learn the business. Even if they had experience, every business is different and operates differently. And so they have to learn the business, they have to learn the ins and outs, how your organization maneuvers. And so then you have that time frame where they're not really up 100%. And what I train people when they're recruiting is that individual is interviewing the organization just like you're interviewing the individual for the position. And so what Carter People Strategy Partners will train in acquisition is that you really need to be upfront with that person about what your culture is and what the expectations are, because you don't want someone coming in your organization thinking they're going to everything's, they're coming into this organization and things are going to work this way when really they work this way. You want to make sure that it's a person that can fit in your organization. If you're a very structured organization, you need to share that. If maybe your organization is not so structured, but they're working towards that, you need to share that so that people know what to expect when they get there, so that they can stay through the growth or the hardships that come with whatever needs to be fixed or whatever you're working on. And I think oftentimes during recruiting, people want to just demonstrate that the organization is in great shape and share all the good things, and don't necessarily want to share what's going to be hard about the role, or what's going to be hard about perhaps working at this organization right now. But that, yes, we're aware that that's hard. We're working towards it, but we're not there yet. If you do that, people can make informed decisions. And then when they bump their heads against that hardship, it's no surprise. And hopefully you can retain that person, and not, because you think about even the time frame, you have someone else training a new hire, that's their salary. And, and then you have that new hire who's getting onboarded, learning all of your information, learning about the role, for them to turn around and leave even a year later. Sure. It's just expensive. And so we want to make sure that if people are honest about the culture, they understand, and that's embedded in the strategy, then they feel more comfortable saying, yeah, this is where we're at, but we have this strategy to get to here. But oftentimes the strategy is just about productivity. It's just about whatever you're making, whatever's going out the door, whatever you're trying to do. And it does not include how you're also going to grow along with the product, how you're also going to mature your culture. And it can be done. It can be done. And it can even be done in bite-sized chunks. But you have to be intentional about it. And it really needs to be included in that strategic vision. And your your C-suite really needs to align with that, and you need to be talking to your team members, your employees about that on a regular basis, because otherwise, it's very easy to focus on, of course, because we all need to make money and everybody wants a paycheck. So it's very easy to focus on that. But when you focus on the other, the development, the growth, all of those things, it really does align. And I have seen it where employees are more innovative, they're more creative. They're coming to you with dreams and goals that can even formulate your strategic vision further than you even may have thought it would have gone, because they're engaged, because they come to work feeling like, okay, this is an authentic place to be, and then they in turn can show up authentically as well. So yeah, I'm not one of these, I'm a realist, so I'm not all about the kumbaya, but I've been doing this a long time and I've seen the difference. Like I've seen when the transparency and everything is at work with employees and development, and I've seen when it's not. And I've seen the harm that can be done when it's not. And so that's why Carter People Strategy Partners, that's my vision. Is to really bring this to organizations in a real way, right? Working with the organizations, listening to them. I know that work still needs to get done, but you can have both and.
Yeah. No, I think there's a lack of transparency that sometimes happens when someone is being interviewed, and also from the interviewee, from both sides. I think sometimes there's this wanting of almost like a courtship of, I want to make a good first impression, of course, and I want to get the job that's being, offered. But I think the best outcome is dependent upon that transparency of what are your expectations, what is it that you're looking for, and is that really going to align with what the opportunity that's being offered? Is that really going to be, realistic, to your point? And is it something that's going to incentivize the person? Because, understandably, everyone is looking for forward progress in whatever that might be. It might be simply a flexible schedule. It could be something of learning opportunities. It could be traveling. Sometimes that's something that others are looking for, while it could be the complete opposite for somebody else, that they're looking not to travel and they want to just be working remote. But I think it's really understanding what are those, priorities, and then being willing to walk away from perhaps someone that isn't a good fit for the culture. I think that's really challenging for a lot of businesses. Again, my background before I started my business, I worked for a large corporation, for those that don't know. And it was a big bank and it was international. I got to do a lot of travel and I got to work with a lot of small businesses across the country. So in that interaction, I worked with mom and pop shops, second generation, sometimes third. And you could see where there was those gaps. And unfortunately, having that kind of legacy type of business where it goes to a second or maybe even a third is very difficult from that first to second generation because of expectations changing, culture, that maybe was part of the family tradition, now going into what could be more modernization, other initiatives. And to put it very simply, work ethic changes. Work ethic in first generation to second generation is just not the same. It just isn't. And so some of those things have to be discussed in a very transparent and honest way to see if that's even something that is reasonable, where someone may say, you know what, this is not really a good fit for me, but maybe it means getting someone else that can be, while you are more in the background, and let someone else who has those skill sets, has that drive, and that ambition to really move things forward. And so there's not, a one way or one solution. I think a lot of it, and I would imagine it's exciting to work with in your capacity with different organizations to have those conversations, because it enables you to also build a library, right? I'm sure you see different ways and approaches to different things, and your ability to be able to share best practices with, different organizations, so that, they can maybe look at things differently than the way they're doing them. Because I think sometimes I look at culture and get your thoughts on this, and how an organization thinks they run things versus how they actually execute. And it's almost as if, someone is, not looking in the mirror and thinking, this looks great on me.
Yeah.
but in reality, you have like that friend or the family where you're like, you're not going out like that, right? You're just like, it's like you do know that that's not quite right, right? And so it's almost kind of having that, reality check in a loving and tactful way of, you may want to just revisit it, make some changes, just so that you're representing yourself the best way. And I think having kind of an assessment, like, or a diagnostic, like you said, is good for any organization from time to time, because sometimes we have a perception in our mind of like, I look just as good as I did when I first started my company, and we're doing great. And that might not be the reality.
Right. Yeah. That was a great analogy. I love that about what you're wearing going out. That's really good.
You can use that. Go ahead.
Yeah, I will. Thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I think that's really good. And I think there's different sizes for every organization, because of course I've worked for manufacturing organizations where we need to ramp up fairly quickly. And so you're maybe using temp agencies or outside agencies. But even in those conditions, there are ways to formulate that interview so that everybody's clearly and fully informed, right? I think oftentimes what happens is exactly what you said, that organizations feel like they're operating one way. But when you talk to the person on the other side, they're being perceived totally different. And we all know perception is everything, right? And so what we want to do is try to get that alignment and that connection, that the way you're saying that you want to show up, the way your culture, your mission, your vision says that you're showing up, that's the way you're actually showing up. And oftentimes we can start that way, but as we grow, we can totally become misaligned. And that could be several things. Do we want to go back and revisit? If we're not showing up this way, how are we showing up? And do we want to revisit? Do we want to look? There's so many different options or ways that you can look at that. But I find that when you're transparent and you really basically treat people the way you want to be treated, because I always say to my managers and team members, I would not want someone to leave a job where they're fairly comfortable and they're okay and they're making good money and go and come to another organization that they think is one way and it's not. And now they're not happy, but they could have stayed where they were. Right. And so we don't want that experience either, because this is a rough job market, and people are looking and people are open, but you just want people to understand where your organization is. And if your organization is not aligned with the culture, okay, well, that's not the end of the world. It's not bad if you're working towards it. And if just let people know what they're getting into. And I find that has helped retention. Mm-hmm. It has also helped to sometimes resolve some of those gaps, because some of those people are coming into the organization with experience, with ideas, with ways to bridge the gap in the culture. If it's a connection gap, if it's we're in a remote environment, and how do we create connection? If it's that type of gap, some of those new hires have come in. They come in to organizations and can bring great ideas and resolutions because it's like a fresh set of eyes. But if they don't know that and they come in and, sometimes not telling the truth is just as bad as telling a lie, so
Yeah.
you've made this perception. So I just encourage organizations to be transparent. And no organization's perfect. So there's nothing wrong with sharing that, hey, we're working towards this. We're not there yet, but we are working towards this. So if this is something you need right away, then, or if you're used to working in an organization that provides this, we're not there yet, or, something like that. I think that's fair. I think it's
Sure.
fair.
No, I think it's also, the right way of approaching it, because a lot of times you can self-inflict some of these challenges for lack of transparency. And so I think it's really important to just accept where you're at. I think there is, obviously with social media and highlighting successes and everything, it could, unfortunately, part of that could lead to this perception that, I don't want anyone knowing that I have struggles, or, I want to only show my wins and not my losses. And I think that there's strength in accepting, there are some things we're focusing on. There are some areas of weakness that we want to strengthen up, and we'd like your help in that regard to do that. And that provides opportunity for innovation. It provides opportunity for growth. And there's always a positive way you can look at those things without having to, act as if they don't exist. And then they become more of an obstacle, and it becomes an expense. Honestly, you end up spending time. Time is money. Yep. And it really just could be something that could cause your business to collapse in the long run as well.
Yeah.
So if a business is looking to, collaborate with you and get maybe a diagnostic, how would they approach that? Would they find you online? What is the best way?
Yeah, I have a website. It's carterpeoplestrategy.com. And they can go on there, and there's a contact form. They can contact me. They can also see all of our offerings and what we offer. I would suggest, you can see just general what we offer, but I would suggest that they would reach out, and I'm definitely glad to talk to them, because we do offer several different packages. We have, of course, most people would start with the strategy diagnostic, but we also offer workforce and people strategy design. We offer the cultural components around change management. We also offer leadership and performance systems.
Okay.
I have a performance management framework that I developed called Dream. And we offer that as to how to really embed your culture into your performance management process, your goal setting process, and all of that. And then we also have some packages around just ongoing advisory and partnership. If we get to the diagnostic and they feel like, okay, we just want some advisory time to really just advise us on this, or maybe they've already started the process and they just want some advice. So they can go to our website and see all that, fill out the contact form, and look at what we have to offer, as well as read more about me. And we do have another team member as well. And
Awesome. Yeah, we'll share that with our community as well, and we'll have it on the replay of this conversation, so that they can easily reach out to you on LinkedIn, on your website. Yep. And again, let them know also, if they want to just identify J3 as how you were introduced to Donna, let her know that you saw her here on our channel. And, just again, if there's anything we could do as well to support with, our mission of really visibility. The J3 Collab Project is working with organizations like Carter People Strategy Partners to really give that visibility of organizations that are all about community impact, empowering business ownership, and also giving everyone the skills they need to really make best use of their time and their money. Time is limited. We're all trying to be more efficient. And sometimes there is erroneously this thought of, not spending. And it should be not spending on things that are not going to be useful versus not spending. Reducing expenses is always a smart thing in any business. I think recognizing good spend and investment versus expense, because I think that's the other, again, mistake is recognizing the difference between an investment versus just an expense. And this is really an investment that they're making in their business and themselves, whether it's leadership, whether it's talent acquisition, and aligning the culture. Reach out to Donna and give yourself the opportunity to really make a educated decision before you just perhaps take things into your own hands, because sometimes it's always good to have support systems and subject matter experts that work with organizations and help them be more successful. So hopefully, you're watching this and some of these questions, some of these topics are resonating with you. So you know what to do. Just reach out and go online, connect with Donna. And we mentioned at the beginning, we've been connected ever since we first met, and we continue to collaborate. We'll continue to do that as well. So anything that you'd like to share before we wrap up? Definitely want to respect your time.
Yeah.
Is there anything that you have, perhaps now that we're kind of still in the beginning of the year, Q1, that you have any initiatives, any events that you wanted to kind of share with the community as we kind of get into the second part of the year?
Now, for Carter People Strategies, we're just follow us on LinkedIn. We're constantly posting. We'll be posting, information as well as, just advertising about our offerings. And we're continuing to grow. And then I do want to say that one of the inspirations for me really finally launching was Johnny's post about really your how you're spending your life and being meaningful. And he's always posting about small businesses. And I follow him on LinkedIn and read and everything. And I'm just thinking, and I really am passionate about helping businesses and helping leaders and helping employees, because, you work so hard and everything, and it really can be done with, just some intention on a regular, consistent basis. And with all of my years of experience in HR, I just am really passionate about getting us to that place where that culture, vision, alignment is there, and then just witnessing the productivity and all that come from that. I've even seen it in my own life. It just is really something I'm passionate about. So thanks, Johnny. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Thank you. Thank you. And congratulations. It's exciting. I think a lot of times the other, trepidation people have is not having everything figured out. And I think that's okay. I think if you take one thing away from this conversation is that that's normal. I think, any healthy organization doesn't have everything figured out. And I think it allows you to continue growing. And sometimes you fall forward. And progression is really the key, not perfection. So hopefully this is encouraging you to do that, to follow in Donna's steps, to kind of take that initiative, to not just wait and not hold back, but to be willing to fall forward and make this year maybe the year that you take that extra step and move your business initiative, your concept forward, and having someone like Donna to maybe provide some of those other elements that you are perhaps missing and identify any gaps in your culture, so that once you do begin or you continue to grow, it can continue to be aligned and you can continue to have, that goal and that initiative really reflect exactly why you started your business to begin with. So thank you, Donna, for being here. Thank you for our viewing audience. We will share your contact information on the post. And until next time, I am Johnny Romero with the J3 Collaboration Project, and I am here with Donna Carter again of Carter People Strategy Partners. We wish you all a great rest of your day, week, and year ahead. Until next time, goodbye.
Thank you.